Imagine a city so grand, so magnificent, that it was called the intellectual capital of the world. A city where scholars, poets, and philosophers once walked its streets, their minds ablaze with knowledge and discovery. Now, imagine that same city brought to its knees in a matter of days. Its golden age shattered, its people massacred, and its ruler humiliated in the most tragic way imaginable. But what led to this catastrophic fall? What ancient city dared to defy the might of one of history's most fearsome empires? And how did the decisions of a single ruler spell doom for a civilization that had thrived for over 500 years? Join us as we unravel the chilling story of the Siege of Baghdad, an event so devastating that it echoed across centuries, marking the end of the Islamic Golden Age and altering the course of history forever. The rise of Baghdad. Baghdad wasn't just another city. When it was founded by the Abbasid Caliph al-Mansur in 762 AD, it was destined for greatness. Built along the Tigris River, its strategic location connected it to the riches of the east and the west. Under the Abbasid caliphs, Baghdad quickly became the heart of the Islamic world. It was a city that didn't just rely on its military strength or wealth, it flourished because of its intellectual achievements. Scholars from around the world flocked to Baghdad. In the legendary House of Wisdom, philosophers debated the works of Aristotle and Plato, mathematicians refined algebra, and astronomers charted the stars. Baghdad's libraries held treasures beyond gold, knowledge that had been gathered and preserved from ancient civilizations. In this golden age, Baghdad wasn't just the capital of the Abbasid Empire, it was the intellectual capital of the entire world. But as the city's fame grew, so did its enemies. While Baghdad's scholars were busy preserving the knowledge of the ancients, far away in the east, another power was rising. A power that had no respect for books or learning. A power that would eventually bring Baghdad's golden age to a violent and bloody end. Decline and looming threats. By the 10th century, the mighty Abbasid Empire began to weaken. For centuries, Baghdad had been a beacon of prosperity, but no empire, no matter how great, is immune to decay. The once unified empire started to fragment. Local governors and warlords began to break away, declaring independence from the caliph. Enemies like the Buyids and Seljuks moved in, taking control of the weakened city in the mid-10th and 11th centuries. While the Abbasids remained as figureheads, their power was a mere shadow of what it had once been. Yet, despite these challenges, Baghdad held on. The city still maintained its stature as a center of culture, but its defenses were now vulnerable. This vulnerability didn't go unnoticed. Far to the east, the Mongols, an unstoppable force led by Genghis Khan and his descendants, were sweeping across the world like a wildfire. They had already brought vast swathes of Asia under their control. Their armies were ruthless, their tactics devastating, and soon, the Mongol horde would set its sights on Baghdad. Under the leadership of Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, the Mongols would unleash a fury that the Islamic world had never seen before. The calm before the storm. In the mid-13th century, Baghdad faced its greatest test. Hulagu Khan had been sent by his brother Monk Khan with a clear mission: conquer the Muslim lands and bring the mighty Abbasids to their knees. Hulagu's campaign had already been merciless. From Central Asia to Persia, cities fell one after another, leaving behind a trail of destruction. By 1257, his armies stood at the gates of Baghdad, ready to strike. Hulagu sent an ultimatum to the Abbasid Caliph, al-Mustasim. The message was simple: surrender or face total destruction. The Mongols had a reputation for sparing cities that submitted peacefully, but for those who resisted, the consequences were unimaginable. But al-Mustasim, the last Abbasid Caliph, refused to submit. Whether it was arrogance, faith in divine intervention, or underestimation of the Mongols' power, al-Mustasim made a fateful decision. Instead of appeasing Hulagu, he dismissed the Mongol threat, believing that Baghdad's mighty walls and the Tigris River would protect the city. What al-Mustasim didn't realize was that the Mongols were not like any enemy Baghdad had ever faced. Their armies were vast, their tactics revolutionary, and their siege engines were unmatched in power. And soon, they would unleash hell on Baghdad. The siege begins. In January of 1258, Hulagu's forces surrounded Baghdad. His army, numbering over 138,000 men, included not only Mongol warriors but also Chinese engineers skilled in siege warfare. The Mongols cut off Baghdad's supply lines, isolating the city from the outside world. As the days passed, the people of Baghdad began to panic. Food became scarce, and the once vibrant city started to descend into chaos. The Mongols wasted no time. Their siege engines, Massive trebuchets and catapults began hurling stones, fire, and even the bodies of plague victims over the city walls. The defenders of Baghdad fought bravely, but they were outmatched and outnumbered. The walls that had stood for centuries began to crumble under the relentless assault. The Mongols employed tactics that terrified their enemies. Their siege engineers, some of the most advanced in the world, created machines that could bring down even the strongest fortifications. Day by day, Baghdad's walls grew weaker. The city that had once seemed invincible was now on the brink of collapse. The fall of Baghdad. On February 10, 1258, after weeks of siege, the Mongols breached the walls of Baghdad. What followed was a massacre unlike anything the world had ever seen. Hulagu's army poured into the city, killing indiscriminately. Men, women, and children were slaughtered in the streets. No one was spared. The Mongols, known for their ruthless efficiency, went from house to house, leaving a trail of death in their wake. For 7 days, Baghdad burned. The city that had been the heart of the Islamic world was reduced to ashes. The Mongols looted its treasures, burned its libraries, and killed its scholars. The Tigris River, once a symbol of life, now ran black with ink from countless destroyed books and red with the blood of Baghdad's people. It was said that the river was choked with so many bodies that the water could no longer flow freely. The House of Wisdom, a symbol of Baghdad's intellectual dominance, was not spared. The Mongols showed no mercy for scholars or their works. Priceless manuscripts, containing the knowledge of centuries, were thrown into the river or burned in great pyres. In a matter of days, centuries of learning were wiped from existence. The death of the Caliph. And what of Caliph al-Mustasim? The last ruler of the Abbasid dynasty was captured by the Mongols. Hulagu, who had shown no mercy to the city, had no intention of sparing its ruler. But the Caliph's execution was not to be an ordinary one. In Mongol tradition, it was forbidden to spill royal blood on the ground. So, Hulagu ordered that al-Mustasim be rolled up in a carpet and trampled to death by horses. The once mighty Caliph, who had ruled over the most powerful empire in the world, was now crushed beneath the hooves of Hulagu's cavalry. The aftermath and legacy. After Baghdad fell, Hulagu established his rule over the region. The city was left in ruins, and its people were scattered. The once great Abbasid Empire was no more. Baghdad, which had been the shining star of the Islamic world, would never fully recover. While it would eventually be rebuilt, it would never regain its former glory. The Islamic Golden Age, a period of intellectual and cultural flourishing, had come to an end. But the legacy of the siege did not end with the fall of Baghdad. The Mongol conquest continued, spreading devastation across the Middle East. The Islamic world, once united under the Abbasids, fractured further. New powers, such as the Mamluks in Egypt and the Ottomans in Anatolia, would rise to fill the void left by the Abbasids. But the memory of Baghdad's fall would haunt the Muslim world for centuries. It became a symbol of the fragility of empires and a reminder of the dangers of underestimating one's enemies. The unraveling of empires. The fall of Baghdad was not just a catastrophe for the Islamic world. It was a turning point in world history. The Mongol Empire, despite its vast conquests, would eventually unravel. Its sheer size made it difficult to govern, and internal divisions led to its fragmentation. Meanwhile, the Islamic world would slowly begin to rebuild. The rise of the Mamluks in Egypt and the eventual emergence of the Ottoman Empire would ensure that the legacy of Islam would endure, even in the face of such devastation. But the story of Baghdad's fall is not just one of destruction, it is also a story of resilience. Though the city was devastated, its people endured. Baghdad remains a vital part of the Middle East, a city that has weathered the storms of history and continues to play a central role in the region today. The lesson of Baghdad is clear. No matter how mighty an empire may be, it is always vulnerable to collapse. And the fall of Baghdad serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of arrogance, ignorance, and underestimation. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more deep dives into history.